Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Happy Friday, beer geeks. Brad and I can't lie. We're feeling it a little bit today.
A little bit bleary, even though it was only 4 beers last night on the live show. 2 of them
But I think the average ABV was I think the average ABV was about 6.5, 7ish.
Yes, some big
2
boys.
beers over 8. Yeah. After we finished our live show last night, I made myself some cheese and biscuits and chutney and polished off the rest of the barley wine, which seemed like such a good idea at the time. I was like, I am living. And then I had some really wacky fucking dreams and have a hangover.
Wow. Cheese dreams, eh? Cheese and barley
dreams.
Wine dreams. I bet they're pretty free.
They're pretty potent, I think, yeah. And you said you woke up at 4 a.m. on the sofa. So
Yeah. We both, that's what you do, man, when you drink a bunch of barley wine before you go to bed.
Certainly at our age.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the live show was enormous fun. It was the first one we've done that's just me and Brad in a long time, which involves a lot of talking. I've got quite a croaky throat. I'm doing sort of that classic American podcast. What do they call it? Like breaking, where it's like, ah, I didn't mean to start a podcast. So apologies if that's grating in your ear holes. But yeah, it was really, really good fun. Seeing people rip into my golden ale and the West Coast double IPA was, it's good to know that all our viewers are honest, open people who aren't afraid of giving brutal feedback. So that was nice. Thank you for that. What did you think of the beers? What you could taste of it?
Well,
given
as you were about to say, I couldn't taste very much with my post-COVID lack of taste buds. But I thought the mouthfeel was great on all of them, Johnny. It's great. I felt like I could get a bit of like the hedgerow on the green hop one.
Hey, cool.
So I could I went in for a quick whiff and I definitely got something. But yeah, it's quite fleeting with my, you can hear I'm quite blocked up still. Yeah, man, I thought they were potentially all great. I love some of the descriptions you were getting from the comments about what they tasted like. Especially the green hop one. People were calling it sort of all kinds of strange countryside jumbles of words. I can't remember any of them now, but I remember they were quite entertaining.
I can tell you're struggling. Mud.
Yeah, mud.
Wet leaves. Hedgerows. Hedgerow was good. I'm happy with that one.
Yeah, hedgerow,
yeah,
right?
and also wet leaves was good.
Yeah.
But, yeah, mud. No, didn't want that.
No, I don't think it tasted like mud. I think I'd probably be able to taste mud.
You reckon?
Yeah. No, I think it was tasting great. I think. Obviously, that would have been even better on cask. But
Yeah, the strange thing is, not only was it much better on cask. Usually, we talk about cask not being so good at sort of promoting hoppy flavors, but actually, it felt much hoppier, much more sort of dialed in. Is the term that a brewer would use, in that you're really getting the flavors popping out rather than it sort of being muddy. But also, it was super clear in cask. So in can, it has a real haze to it, which is probably just because, a cask is sat there for a couple of days in position before you vent it and you pour it. And obviously my can was moved around in the fridge and whatever. That might be a bit of it, but it was beautifully crystal clear and red and autumnal on cask. And I think it just goes to prove what we've been saying for the last couple of weeks with our normal show, that cask is the ultimate way to present certain styles.
Cask is king, as one of the comments said on the video. Yeah, great stuff.
Absolutely. So that was a pretty good segue to this week's video, which was, of course, episode 3 in our series all about cask, sponsored by Fuller's. And this week we were talking about the future of cask ale. So looking at the new and innovative brewing that's happening around the UK that's trying to inject a bit of modernism into cask, trying to attract new people into it, and trying to experiment and prove that cask ale is just a format, It's not specific to any style, to any country, to any brewery, to any traditions. You can put whatever you want through it, and if you design it right, it will work super well. And I think that beer at Dark Star was a really good example of that.
Banging, very modern, something you would not expect to get from a cask line. One of the hippiest styles going, and it tasted phenomenal.
Yeah, it was really great, and it looked really great as well. When I was editing the stuff, particularly when we were talking to Henry, and I think the bar staff had crafted it to look absolutely perfect. And you had that wonderful tight white head on the top, without a sparkler, and it looked like it was a fresh pour from keg at a brewery. Like it was just absolutely beautiful. And yeah, hopefully we've changed some minds about what's possible on cask. My one regret is that we didn't actually try any of the really wacky beers on cask at Abbeydale. They didn't have any on at that particular point, and because they don't have a tap room, it's not sort of just sat there to tuck into. So I wish we'd been able to try some saisons and stuff on cask. But if you do want to see if that works, we at Forest and Main in Philadelphia, who also do cask ale, we had a beautiful mixed firm saison of theirs on cask that was bloody great. So we do know it works.
Yes, 100%.
I'll put a link to that video in the show notes, and obviously one to this week's video. Did you find any fun comments, Brad?
Yeah, we got quite... Henry, head brewer at Dark Star, got a lot of love. So Chris Jones says, Henry is such a superstar. More of him, please. Mod Grip says, love that Dark Star's brewers energy. Whoa. Hardy Yards Brewers said, thanks guys. Both Abbeydale and Dark Star are doing great work by the looks. And head brewer Henry is obviously very passionate. You can tell by the way he talks with his hands. That's what brewing needs to change minds and push boundaries. Wicked. So, yeah, I think it was cool. So, Emma got a bit of love as well. Ben from Filmbuster said, fantastic installment. I want to go for a drink with Emma. She seemed great. So I think, it was, we had some real great talent on that episode. The people were so passionate that we were talking to about the future of cask, in Henry and Emma, that I think it really came across and hopefully got everyone quite excited about it, because I think all of these new styles that like Henry and they're doing up in Abbeydale and stuff, that just seems to be going from strength to strength, and I can imagine that becoming more of their core beer and more of the sort of output being the kind of future forward stuff for those particular breweries. So I thought it was really exciting.
Yeah, and we definitely need those breweries in the craft beer scene in the UK, because that's where we're going to get a bit more diversity rather than having loads of New England IPA on cask on keg. Having it in a different format, having breweries that may say, yeah, we love doing modern beers, but we're going to put it through the traditional British serve, I think is really, really lovely and can add some diversity when New England IPA dominates whatever pub you're in. And hopefully they'll keep pushing that forward. Dark Star have the creme brulee, which isn't to my taste, but is a really, really popular beer, and I think that's great on cask because it brings out that kind of sweet, treacly, caramelly kind of flavour of creme brulee much better than it would when you've got loads of spiky CO2 in there. and to see saisons and stuff like that poured traditionally, as Jim sort of mentioned when we were chatting to him, that's how it all would have been. It used to be just stick a tap in a barrel and pour it from that. So although it's super modern, it's also looking back at the real traditions of serving beer anywhere in the world. That's how it all had to be. So making sure that little bit of heritage still survives and is presented as super modern is really cool.
Nice.
So we had lots of technical questions. I think lots of people were blown away by the idea that you could do New England IPA successfully on cask. And most of the comments around that were around the issue of oxidation. So obviously we've talked a lot on the channel about oxidized beer and how New England IPA in particular is really susceptible to oxidation. And that's that process where oxygen's in there, it breaks down and mutes all of the hop flavors in there. It slowly turns the beer brown, and that's why we should all drink New England IPA as fresh as we can and keep it cold. But obviously with cask, there's a couple of issues with that. The first one being, if you've seen all the videos of us, definitely not us, of brewers filling casks, it's quite an open process. You have essentially a hose that's shooting beer into a barrel with a big hole in the top. So it's not like when you can or when you keg, where it's almost a closed transfer and you can purge the CO2 out of it. The reason that it can still work is because you're re-fermenting in that cask. You're creating that secondary fermentation that creates CO2 and bubbles in the beer, and that will protect the beer from a lot of the oxygen. So that fermentation process should suck up lots of oxygen, because yeast needs oxygen to ferment, which should leave almost no oxygen in the cask. So that's how it kind of works then. The issue is that you do have to store it a little bit warmer to ensure you get that secondary fermentation. So that breaks the rule a little bit of keeping these New England IPAs cold. But they can still survive, a couple of days at a warmer temperature. It's only 1 or 2 degrees of gravity before it's ready to serve. And then the other issue is, of course, once you vent it and once you start pouring, you're pulling oxygen in. So you're going to get oxidation starting to happen. And, that happens with all cask ale, usually over about 3 days. But with this beer, I think Henry said in the video, like, he wanted it gone in 24 hours, or else he was worried it was gonna turn. So that is what's going to really hold New England IPA in cask back, I think. And you can add stuff like ascorbic acid, which can reduce the effects of oxidation, but always it's going to be a little bit trickier to get this right, which is why it was a Thursday, wasn't it? We were at the Evening Star, so it was going to be busy. And they've done that on purpose to make sure they got through it. So we had loads of questions about that, so I won't read out any specific ones, but thank you very much for everyone that queried that, because that's something we did actually have it. We did have a chat with Henry about that, and it got lost. I say lost, edited out, because the first draft of this video was an hour and a half long. It was full documentary style. So sadly, we also had to cut quite a lot of our chat with Emma as well. And I'm always sort of trying to think of ways we could use all that stuff that gets cut. So we've got probably another 15 minutes of Henry, another 15 minutes with Pat and Sue at Abbeydale, and probably another half hour with me and Emma. But I don't know what we can do with that. But if anybody has any ideas, maybe it's a series of podcasts of out of context chats with brewers and beer geeks.
Could be.
Brad does not seem enthused. Fair enough. So thanks for all of the comments, and thanks for enjoying that. Next week we are in Margate, although on the live show somebody confused Margate with Marmite and got very confused about us being in Margate, which was hilarious to see after the live show finished. We are in Margate, which is a town on the south coast, investigating the micropub scene, the explosion of beautiful little pubs down there. That is, I'd say, one of your great passions, the micropub, Brad.
Oh, I absolutely love it, mate. Yeah, I feel very at home in a quirky micropub. They're just brilliant. They're just little expressions of people's personalities. You can get much more passionate than a micropub owner. They're each one of those people. They're living their individual dream. They're their own boss. They're the master of their own destiny, and they put all of their love and art and whatever their interest is. Trains. There's even a train theme one down there. There's a sort of magic bar. I wouldn't call that a micropub necessarily, but there's all kinds of quirky little micropubs down there that we sort of just jump into this world for the next episode. So all very exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's lots of very funny moments that happen to us on our one-day pub crawl of Margate and Broadstairs.
Yeah, man.
So we've got a question this week. If you want to send a question that we will either read out, or if you send a recording, we'll play it on the podcast. You can send that to craftbeerboys@gmail.com. But this week we have a question, a very suitable question about cask from Stuart Cockram, and specifically about a topic we've been avoiding, which is the sparkler.
Hi, Bro and Johnny. It's great to see you championing cask. But I've got a question about the most divisive issue in beer. Sparkler or no sparkler? So I've got a few questions. Are you guys sparkler or no sparkler? What are the origins of the sparkler? And why is there such a north-south divide on this issue? Cheers, guys, and keep up the great work.
So thanks for sending that, Stuart. The first question was, are we sparkler or no sparkler? Bradley, are you sparkler or no sparkler?
I think I'm sparkler. Why not? I mean, it adds something, I'm sure. I just like it. It's a bit of theatre, isn't it? It adds that sort of creaminess, which is cool.
Okay, and I am no sparkler.
Oh, that's handy.
Mostly no sparkler. If the beer isn't in great condition, so it's not got loads of CO2 in solution, giving us that lovely prickly mouthfeel and carbonation, then I'd want a sparkler on it. I think you can rescue a badly conditioned pint with a sparkler, but generally I'd go no sparkler because I think that the body's there, and the creaminess won't suit all styles as well. I don't really want a creamy bitter. I'd love a creamy mild. I think it's horses for courses, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I flip between the two, and when I'm in the north, I obviously have a sparkler. I'm not going to tell a northerner to take a sparkler off in their own pub. But generally, yeah, I prefer it without, and I think that a good pint doesn't need it. And we've seen lots of great pints being poured without sparklers in this series, including at the Southampton Arms. That shot, I think it's in the intro of all of the videos, poured at the Southampton from a distance, and there's just so much beautiful head coming off of it.
Is that a Jarl?
Because it's well kept. I think it was a Jarl, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was in beautiful form.
Real nice.
Yeah, don't need a sparkler for that.
I guess I'm the same, actually. Now I can think about it, I'm probably... It's maybe a more honest representation of beer without a sparkler. Do we think that a sparkler is almost a little bit of a cheeky device to hide some of the sort of... it kind of hides some of the flavours and stuff, doesn't it? And it's a way of potentially tarting up a beer that maybe is not at its best.
So I can answer that question as we answer Stuart's question. Kill two birds with one stone. The second question was, what are the origins of the beer sparkler? So this week I dug into that and I found a great blog, I'll put the link in the show notes, to the origins of the beer sparkler and what it was originally intended for. So it seems that in 1885, a guy called George Barker applied for a patent for his invention, which was basically a ball with lots of holes in that you could pour beer from, and he called it an aerator. And in sort of I guess it's an advert or it's someone else talking about it, it says, Barker's patent aerator of beer, stout, porter, and other liquors is a new invention likely soon to be seen in every bar for improving the flavour and appearance especially of beer. So I think the key there is appearance especially of beer. So I think what it does is it's not rescuing bad pints. What it's doing is guaranteeing that the pint will look good. So to me, what a sparkler does is it actually can kind of ruin good pints a little bit, and it can rescue the pints that aren't quite as good. So that's what it does. It guarantees a decent looking pint and a decent flavoured pint. And later on in the advert, they even say, flat beer drawn through the cask becomes quite palatable. So that was the original intention. It was to rescue flat beer.
And what it essentially does, right, is it's aerating, isn't it? So it's bringing oxygen into the beer and kind of like livening it.
It's just agitated the beer, basically. Like if you shake up a can and then open it, the head that comes out is really creamy.
Yes. It's
not sort of big bubbles. It's like a jet of foam, like when they do it after F1 races as well. So it's basically it's aeration. It's creating texture. It probably is pushing oxygen in there, and it's stripping out CO2.
Well, what I was thinking is, if you're pushing oxygen in there, are you sort of killing flavour? Are you losing flavour? Because you're kind of getting, you're almost oxidizing it instantly.
I think longer term you would. I don't think oxidation is quick enough.
Yeah.
That it would happen while you were drinking the pint. I'm not quite sure. I wonder if there have been studies. That can be my research for next week. I'll come back to you and let you know if you do oxidize your beers by doing it. But I'd imagine you do. I'd imagine you are increasing the amount of oxygen because you're increasing the amount of surface area as it goes through those holes in the ball.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's you're sort of separating it into a million little pieces, like you're almost mincing it as it's coming out.
Yeah,
and then it's sort of coming back together as it goes through the end of the sparkler. So for me, it feels like you're just introducing lots of air, essentially, into it. When you
I guess it's called an aerator, so you're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, as with all things in life, I think the answer to sparkler or no sparkler has to be it depends.
When in the north.
Yeah. So then the final question from Stuart was, why is it a northern thing? And I can only guess as to that. It was invented in Wigan, so I presume it would have spread out from there slowly but surely. And so, I guess that's why, it didn't spread all the way down south. Maybe it was seen as a northern thing by the time it got to the south, and the Southerners weren't so interested in it.
We're talking about beer culture here as well. That's sort of has a locality to it. That's kind of what the whole series is about. Cask is about, it being of this land, and I think the sparkler is sort of, that's an even more localized kind of tradition. And I think it is tradition as well, right? So it's what those kind of communities want out of their cask beer versus what maybe a lot of southern beer communities want out of their beer, which is different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is also exciting because it's like a different dialect, or it's just hyper localized sort of differences.
Yeah, and I really enjoy that regionality to it. Just before we move on, because I realise I'm going to give the link to this blog, there's a sentence in there which I just have to flag because it's complete nonsense, where he says, without the sparkler, cask ale pours flat with a loose thinnish head that dissipates quickly. No, absolutely not. That is a bad pint of cask. If you have a good pint of cask poured not through a sparkler, you should still get a wonderfully slightly looser but still tight head that will remain for the entirety of the pint. So that's all we've got time for this week. All that's left is a couple of quick announcements. So the first one is that on Sunday we have another feature-length Bubble podcast going live with me and Rob, and we are interviewing Oric Digital, Peter and Aaron of Oric Digital, who are a games developer. They're working on a homebrew game called Brewmaster, which is sort of probably for non-homebrewers, so that you can learn the process and make beer at home, and it's sort of a hobby sim, I think is the phrase that they use. So we talk about that very exciting development that hopefully Craft Beer Channel are going to be a bit involved in. And then on top of that, we also talk about the games development industry, which has a lot in common with beer. Worker exploitation, for one. Big versus indie producers, science versus art. Lots of stuff that we talk about in the beer industry really applies to games dev as well. So it's a really interesting podcast. Peter and Erin are super open and honest about the issues in their industry, which very much mirror ours. The other thing, what was the other thing to mention, Brad? Oh, yeah. The other thing to mention is that obviously this has been a really tough week in craft beer. If you've been following along, it's the McKellar Beer Celebration this weekend, which is a festival run by McKellar, who have been accused literally, I think, hundreds of times now since the sort of the Me Too movement in beer kicked off, of examples of sexual harassment, toxic workplace culture, sexism, all around their businesses around the world. So lots of breweries have been boycotting that festival, and lots of campaigners have been calling for that. And we've supported those campaigners, and we just want to say that if you guys have any ideas about how we can, put a formal complaints process in place, get a code either in the UK or internationally, to make sure that these issues don't happen again, to make sure that there's consequences for breweries that are creating toxic work cultures and really damaging people's lives, then we'd love to hear from you. We want to be part of the solution. So our DMs are open on all of our socials. You can email us at craftbeerboys@gmail.com, or you can join our Discord and talk to lots of like-minded people on there, and we've been talking a lot about that over the last week in our Patreon Discord. So please do get in touch. Dialogue is the way to get through this, for sure. And I think that's everything, Bradley, yeah?
That's it, man. Love and beer for another week.
Love and beer. The Bubble and Friday 5pm podcasts are brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer channel. You can watch over 400 mini documentaries at youtube.com/the Craft Beer channel. And if you love what we do, support us via Patreon and get access to merchandise and our amazing Discord forum, a positive and welcoming space for everyone who loves beer, food and homebrewing. Love and beer.